Pebble. Mother Teresa said, "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water to create many ripples." Do you know what she meant by that? Meant what I'm already talking about this morning, and that is that we know there's so much going on in the world that we can't do a thing about. It makes us feel hopeless sometimes. We wish we could, but we can't. What we can do, though, we can change ourselves a little bit. And that's what she meant. She can cast her stone. She could do what little she can do, and she did a lot. She did an awful lot. But she was very modest. She pretended it was just a little. Well, we know better, don't we? We know about the things she did in the world and how great they were. I mentioned earlier a course that I took in sociological mindfulness, and there was a quote that I will always remember from a book by Michael Schwalbe. And he said, "Our true power lies in our ability, through words and deeds, to demonstrate others a better way of doing things." Now, do I need to say that again? Our true power lies through words and deeds to demonstrate to others a better way of doing things. Now, how does that work in the physical world? Because I'm going to talk about it in metaphysical terms in just a minute, because we talk about that a lot here. And you go through the coffee line and you pay for the person behind you. And then they're tempted to do the same thing. You hold the door for someone, just kindness. You smile at someone. You let someone in the line when there's a whole lot of traffic, or not. You bully your way on down the highway, not mindful at all if there's anyone else around you. You're only mindful of your needs. So in sociological terms, we're being mindful of everyone around us and the effect that we have. What if I just said something ugly to someone and they passed that on? Same thing. That's casting a stone. So that's what we're talking about, and that's what she was talking about this morning too. And the man that wrote the book, and we've talked about it here sometimes, and maybe we should do that program again and do a workshop on a complaint-free world. The man that wrote that program and wrote a book and has been wildly successful with it is a Unity minister. He resigned his church and went on to teach all over the world. He's teaching a complaint-free world, and you can even get a bracelet that whenever you complain, you flip it. It'll pop you. If you'd really like to have one of those, I'll order it for you. Okay? They're purple and they're really cute. We've had them before. I think I'm going to order some. Because every time you send a complaint out into the world, that it is affirming to the universe that whatever you're complaining about is going to stay with you and it's going to come right back to you. And the more we complain, the more we're going to have to complain about. And that's what we teach here every Sunday, is to keep your words positive, keep your life positive. And we're practical. We're very practical here. As a matter of fact, Unity was called Practical Christianity in its beginnings. We're very practical. We walk the earth just the way you do. We know there's some cranky people out there, and trust me, I stay clear of them. I was doing some consulting work for a firm several years ago about that same time I was talking about, and I've told many of you about it. And the manager there had all these Christian principles up on the wall. And the receptionist at one time finally told me, she said, you know, he needs to rip those off the wall, throw them out the window, because he certainly doesn't live that way. He was overbearing and rude. But he had those Christian principles right up there on the wall where you could see them every time you entered. So she and I had a little pact together. I just loved her. She was just a little mountain girl, and she came down, and I bet she didn't weigh 100 pounds, and she sat and ate potato chips all day long and drank Cokes. I'd like to see her today. I'd like to see if she's still like that. She was the cutest thing, though. But we decided the place needed a motto, and it was, if you saw somebody coming in the front door for an interview, tell them to pick up their purse and run. Just as fast as they could. Get out of there. Now, I live in a practical world, and I know that. There are a lot of places I go, I pick up my purse and I run out of there. I still do. Because I know it's a negative place, and I don't want to be around that kind of energy. So I do understand there's some places that you can go, the energy and the negativity is so much, you don't even want to be there. But generally what we talk about is sharing our light, and that's what Jesus told us. Jesus said that too. Go out into the world and share your light. And there's another minister I'm going to quote this morning, and he just happens to be a Quaker. And they're the most peaceful, or were thought to be the most peaceful of people in the world. But you know how religion gets in the way, and they've even had a couple of splits because they had a difference of opinion over time of who held more light than others. Can you imagine? But the George Fox was the one that founded the Quaker spirituality, and they actually, at most of their meetings, they just sit and in the silence. And he affirmed that there's a light within each of us, and we affirm that too. And that light is equal, and the only difference is that some of us have learned that we have that light, and our light shines a little brighter, and that's the only reason, is because we know we have it. It's not because my light my light bulb has more lumens than yours at all. Not at all. It's because I've learned that I have it. And how did I learn that I wanted it? Is that I came to a place, and I've told you this before, in the mid-90s, where I had resigned a position I just couldn't do anymore. I couldn't show up for that anymore. Too much stress, too many decisions, too much division, and I knew there was something else that I had that God wanted me to do in this life. And I know now what it was, but I didn't know then, see? And a lot of times we're in that transition period, and it's difficult. It's not easy. You'd think that every step would be illumined, but it's not. A lot of times it's difficult. It might be the most difficult time of your life. But I remembered I was in a program I really didn't want to be in. I was doing some consulting work I didn't really want to do. And I just, Dan was out on one of his, he was on the road, and I was there by myself most of the time during the week. Jonna was at school. Sherry had left us, and I've told you about that before, and sounded pitiful about my children leaving me. And she had finished school at the University of North Texas, but Jonna was still close by in Chattanooga at University of Tennessee. But she'd come home on the weekends, but most of the week I was there alone, and it was good. It was a very healing time for me. And I remember one day, though, I was just so concerned. I was so miserable because I didn't know what it was I was supposed to do with my life. I knew I was supposed to do something, but I couldn't stand what I'd done before, and I just couldn't do it another moment. And I remember I lay down on the floor, and I was doing some yoga, and I just laid down on the floor, flat on the floor, my arms spread eagle, whole body spread eagle. I said, okay, God, I've come to the end of the road here, and I don't know what to do anymore. I can't stand doing what I've done for another moment, but I don't know what you've got in store for me yet. But I am asking you if you would show me my next right step. It doesn't have to be the whole staircase. It doesn't even have to be a road. Just show me my next right step. And I look back on that as the sort of a magical time for me, because it is said that if you ask, it will be given, right? But if you don't ask, it won't. You've got to ask. And I did. And I said it with my entire heart. My entire heart was engaged. I haven't found what works for me yet, but I trust that you'll show me. And then it all started to change. Started to change for me. I started to find what worked for me and what didn't. I started to find situations that were toxic to be in. And with love, I separated myself from them. I did the best I could not to injure anyone else, but to just stay away from certain toxic situations that were not going to heal. And my being there was not serving any purpose, because no one was willing. If I had a light to share, they weren't willing to see it. And you see, that's the kind of fear that I was talking about earlier when I felt that awful, I had that vision, and the awful feeling of no love, no light, and no hope. And I sure didn't want any part of that. But Philip Gulley is a pastor with the Quaker Church, and he wrote a book a few years ago because he was pretty frustrated with the divisions in their own church, where there were and we've all seen this, even within the Quaker organization, the more fundamental, those in the middle, and then those on the edge, and they just couldn't get together. And he wrote a book called If God Were Christian. It's powerful. If you haven't read it, get it. Go to the library, check it out. I know I have at least one copy. Remind me. Because after a Sunday service, a lot of times I can't remember anything, but remind me. And he says, if the church were Christian, what would it be like? Well, it'd be exactly like what I just said to you. It'd be like the organization. Instead of just having the proclamations on the wall, they actually lived it. How odd would that be? We walk the talk. We say there's one power. We believe we're connected to it. We know that our thoughts should be positive. We pray and we meditate, and then we go out into the world and we share our light with others. But I love what Pastor Gully says in some of his sermons, and he said exactly what I did a moment ago, and that is that we all we were born with the same light. Some of us have discovered it and asked for it, and some of us haven't. Some of us are still turning to our earthly powers, and I know we're all still walking the earth. We got bills to pay, and we have to think about that. I know that. We have a lot of practical things that we have to take care of. But we are guided with an inner knowing. If we will accept that light, we'll ask God to illumine us. I talked last week a little bit about lumens and the number of lumens that are in these newer lights that you can think I've been so confused by that. I think I'm buying a 60-watt light. Well, go to the store and try to find one. And you read the box and it'll tell you a lot of things, but this equals this now, and that equals that. But what we're actually looking for, and we'll learn the new terminology, not certain LEDs or watts or whatever, but how much light do I want? How much light do I want to shine on me, through me, around me? Sometimes I need a lot more light to read than others. It depends on what time of day it is. If I have plenty of sunlight, I'm good. A lot of lumens there, right? But another saying by Will Bowen, the one that wrote The Complaint-Free World, that I just love. You're going to love it too. When one grape starts to ripen, it sends out a vibe. It sends out an inner energy. It sends out a pheromone to encourage the other grapes to ripen too. Did you know that? Those in vineyards know it. And right now, they're looking at their grapes to see which ones have ripened, so that they can pick them at the perfect time to make the perfect wine. And August, I believe, is the month where most of those grapes are ripening. And you have one that ripens first, and it's encouraging the other. And it's doing exactly what I told you earlier that all of us have done. And that is to do what we said Mother Teresa does, and that is, I'm going to cast my pebble as far as I can into the ocean of life so that I can make the biggest difference in the world. And I'm going to send ripples out everywhere. And that's all I came to say today. Each of you are lucky enough you got 2 sermons. Just look at that. But I would just say, ask. If you don't feel like you've asked enough, ask God. Ask that energy that's love to fill you with love and light. Ask to know. If you need to know what your next right step is, just ask. Just shine a light, God, on my next right step. And then the one after that. And I promise, I'll walk that pathway, no matter how difficult it is or how many difficult people I come into contact with. even if I have to pick up my purse and run at certain times. Ask, and you shall receive. You are the light of the world.